Hi, everyone. We're in the Invincible Innovation live show. The show is about the future of people with tech. I'm Mazor Kario, innovation and value creation expert, and I'll be your host. And today with me is Maarten Pieters, head of co-creation and people insight in Signify, and the author of the 7 Principles of Complete Co-Creation. Hey, Maarten.
Great. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. I wanted to just say that I met Maarten like 2 years ago when we met in the Google offices in San Francisco. And he came to talk about co-creation. And I was very impressed with he's being smart and charming at the same time. So I'm very happy to have him here. So tell us, how did you become this innovation and co-creation expert that you are? What came about there?
Nice question to start off with. So as everything, and I think for most people, everything's a journey, right? So my journey of becoming someone who focuses on co-creation, somebody who uses co-creation as the main principle behind innovation, behind solving problems, has of course also happened over for many years. I started off in innovation as we know it, kind of the normal style innovation, concept creations, design thinking, that whole world. And at some point I realized that the projects that we had done that were most successful were actually the ones where we were collaborating as much as possible together with the end users, with all the different stakeholders. Often, and you will recognize this, often what happens is, you get the external consultants that come in, or you got a small group of designers or whatever. And then, they start figuring out what to do together with market research or not, doesn't matter. But they kind of decide from some point on what needs to happen. And sure, they test, sure, they validate, but do you really do it together, right? Is it really based upon on all these different nuances that people really care about, that you're doing this for? No. And at some point...
Like it's a gut feeling in some cases. It's not like really valid.
Yeah, absolutely. And at some point I realized, well, you know what, these projects that become really successful, the one thing that really made the difference, of course, next to all the other things that are really important, that really was that collaboration. And that was for me the moment I said, okay, I'm going to focus more on co-creation, more on this element of collaboration. And that's how I then started working on different projects, freelance projects, focusing specifically on co-creation. And then Philips Lighting was one of my customers. At some point, Philips then asked me, hey, are you interested maybe in joining us? Because we do see there's an opportunity here, and we do know this is important, and could you maybe help us do more of that? We're not exactly sure what this means, but I think there's something in here. And yeah, please. And that's for me was the great opportunity as well, because I believe in changing companies. I believe in changing environments and in society as large. But you can't do that from the outside. You have to be part of it. So
it's like the culture of the company. It's not only like coming and saying and then going.
And then there's a good point what you're saying, because when it comes to co-creation, a very big part of it is about the culture, right? I always say you need to make co-creation part of the DNA of your organization.
Right.
And then you need to be there.
So tell me, how did Philips really change when you came to their staff? And did they do something very different than they did before?
Well, okay, so just for context as well. So when I joined Philips Lighting, we were in a reorganization. Now we're called Signify. So we're loose from Philips, but we're still a company with 40,000 people worldwide, still the world leader in lighting, in connected lighting and lighting for the IoT world. It's a fascinating world. There's tons to be done. From an innovation standpoint, it's one of the top companies to work for. Really cool. But the thing is, it's not like it's really different, or it can do a lot of things in a drastically different way. It's nuances, right? I always say, like, well, look, just do what you're doing and do what you're good at. Just do it in a slightly more co-creative way. Right. So, and that means, well, for instance, instead of doing a normal trajectory, normal innovation process, think about how you can involve the people that you're doing this for, the different stakeholders from an earlier stage even. But what type of role are you giving them? Are you collaborating with them really, or are you just sharing information? Could we maybe do a few more creative sessions with maybe your customer, your end user, your consumer, instead of just doing the standard kind of market research that's done, right? Or instead of doing validation at the end, which is most of the time the case, like, look what we've done. He validated, look at what we have. And then like, it's beautiful, like, great.
Yeah, you want them to say, yeah, it's exactly what we wanted. That's like, you just need the check in the end, like, yeah, you did what I wanted. That's it.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, there's another point, but doing really good market research is really difficult. And it's easy to say, like, okay, well, here I've got, I don't know what, I've got an app or something like that, and does it work? And does it do what you expected? All these stuff. I mean, fine, great, keep on doing that stuff. But real market research is really difficult. So if you just ask people, for instance, the product owner or something, to validate the product that most of the time they came up with themselves, so those nuances, right? And I think this is recognizable for everyone. It's like those nuances. Take it as early as possible. Start collaborating more. Involve people. Make them co-owners almost, if possible.
Yeah. Not only like, we've done all this, and now you just show it to people and see what they're saying. Like, really make them part of the process itself in many points on the way, not only in the beginning and the end, like in the market research and in the validation in the end, all through the process.
Yeah, exactly.
And, like, we're in the middle of a crisis right now, and many companies are struggling to do things differently because the world is changing. So what would you advise big companies to do, and how can they navigate this unknown market right now?
Well, that's also a very good question. The thing is, there are a lot of unknowns, but I think there are a lot of unknowns because people are not necessarily used to this situation, right? Next, of course, to indeed a world out there that we don't exactly know what the implications are, but it's also a different way of working, so that creates more unknowns. And in this world, I think if you collaborate, and I think companies know this, right? People are aware of the fact that, okay, if we want to solve these issues, if we want to move forward, if we want to tackle some of the big societal problems that we're facing at the moment, besides COVID, we have to collaborate. We have to move forward together. So that understanding is there. But then the problem is, of course, how do you then actually collaborate? So, I mean, you got this fantastic initiative, for instance, in Europe, which is called the EIT, Institute for Innovation and Technology, and they have this idea of knowledge integration, basically, knowledge and technology integration, which means organizations work together with academia and education, and there's a lot of stuff kind of happening there. And that's great. And the area where I work in Eindhoven, the Brainport region, is known for this. It's a very collaborative environment where people are trying to help each other, basically. Organizations are working together to figure out how we collectively can do better. And so that knowledge exists. But once you then have said, and once you've understood that, doing things together is important, how then do you actually get people to then do that if this is not the way that they're actually used to? So, you have your process, and if I come from a different organization, I have my process. The first thing you have to figure out is how to work actually together. So there's a lot of different tensions and struggles that are happening there. So what I would advise people to do is to focus not just on saying, oh, we need to partner up with different organizations, we need to do open innovation, et cetera, which all fits into that world of co-creation, of collaboration, interaction. But it's really about figuring out how can we facilitate people that actually have to do the work, let's say, right? To really work together, to really understand what they're doing and why and what they're focused on. And how can we then involve all these different actors and to move forward and walk that journey together? And that can be partially by handing them tools. It could be about creating different content for them to learn from, about giving them examples. But really, it's about giving them everything and creating that context, which will be different for every situation, every organization. But how can you figure out how to move forward together?
Yeah. So you talk about like two things. One is the tools. Second is like, how do we collaborate together? And the third one is the mindset of really wanting to collaborate, understanding that we should do that in order to solve something, which is we have so many complex problems and with so many unknowns. So we need to find a way to solve these. And and we have problems which are not only connected to a certain point, to a certain industry or to a certain company. It's something that everybody faces. So it's like really makes sense to have that. So tell me more about what you were doing with the academy. So I read one of your posts on LinkedIn, so I'd be happy if you could tell us more.
Well, before we get into that, think about the step before what we were talking about, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think that's maybe an element that I still need to kind of add on to. Working with unknowns, by being a co-creative organization, by doing, let's say, the things that co-creation means, right? What the principles of it.
Yeah.
You're also better equipped to actually handle those different types of unknowns, because you don't have to figure everything out yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And this is also simply in terms of academy, what we're trying to do internally in the organization, but of course also outside, if possible, is help people to simply understand that. It's just taking the next step to doing more co-creation. And for some people, that means I really have to understand this mindset. And everybody recognizes it, right? It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
But it requires a bit of empathy. It requires people to start looking maybe in a different way at the challenge. It does require putting your end user, your customers first, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we see it often. Everything's a tech push often, right?
Yeah.
Especially in these environments where I work in. So we've got this fantastic thing.
Most technology companies, tech is very prominent, and people who do tech are very top ladder people, and C-level is very technical. And the talk is very about how can we create something, and not why and how. It's more like how do we execute, more or less, because it's like they're engineers, they know how to solve these.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, R&D is crucial.
Sure,
it's one of the most important things. Yeah, if not the most important for us to move forward, to really innovate. I mean, and people are aware of this, but there too, how can you do this in a co-creative way? And this, so when it comes to teaching other people, when it comes to coaching other people, it's really about just simply moving forward, trying to figure out how can you as a person take that next step. Whether it's about adopting different tools, whether it's about taking the tools that you have and simply adopt them in a more co-creative way. Or just start with that mindset, and how can you then reach out to other people to also help them, because it's never one person, right? It's you have to do it together, and all the other people have to come along as well. But everybody does it in their own speed.
Yeah, I think it's what I said about the mindset when you're talking. I think another thing is that in many cases in companies that are very structured, hierarchical companies, it's hard for people to think in a net that we are all in together and we are all equal in order to solve this, and we need to collaborate in a way. And the fact that you're saying, I know some of the solution, I know a very specific part, and other people from diverse background could give me a better background to solve it. It's a way of thinking. Most people are very dedicated to what they're doing, and they believe that it's very important. And I think it's more like a way of thinking, like in the culture. Like in Israel, everybody knows everything, if you didn't know that.
Of course.
So it's like we're very used to doing things together because we are very like traditional and very closed culture. But I think that it's a way of thinking of a problem from the point of view of a person, something which is very human in a sense, because human beings are built to do things together. They are not built to do things alone.
Exactly. And you point out a few very good things. It's look, and you see that certain regions find this easier, right? So let's say in the north of Europe, so the Scandinavian areas, the Netherlands, where I'm from, it's more common for different organizations, for people to collaborate more. If you go to sort of other areas in the world, this is maybe not so the case. And so, we have to be mindful of these cultural differences as well. And, there's something else that you mentioned that I think is also very important for your listeners. Is one of the key things I think that everybody can do from a personal point of view, right? Anybody in an organization, is they can take the ownership for themselves to become more co-creative. That means that they also have to help other people be more co-creative, right? That means you have to facilitate other people basically to do better. help them
Yeah.
understand why you're doing what you're doing, but also vice versa. It's really communicating, not just sending, not just receiving. It's really doing both and trying to understand and try to figure out how, with of course some empathy, with some soft skills, with some patience, with some forming and storming and all of these. And
Yeah.
how do you get them to move forward together?
Yeah, I think that it's very, like, when you're saying that, it really makes sense to me as a person, that you want people to understand you and you to understand them, and together you can do something better than each one of you alone. That's the
Yeah,
beginning of that. And inside a company, it means that you have less ego, in a sense. It's not like I'm here and I'm delegating my ideas and my tasks to other,
yeah,
or assigning other, like, people things to do. It's more like thinking, like, how can we do, I'm taking my expertise and knowledge and talents and your talents, and how can we do this better together?
yeah.
So it really makes sense.
At
So
the same time, it is more complex because it is easier to simply say, "Oh, okay, you're responsible for this, you're responsible for that, you're responsible for that," and we just move
yeah,
forward. And you work on that parallel stream, you work on that parallel work stream. It does look easier this way because you can have that overview.
yeah,
But of course, if you then want to then do that in a co-creative way, it does mean you have to communicate more. But it also means that everybody needs to be aware of what's happening, so that everybody can put in the different pieces of the puzzle that they can add to it. So you're rightfully saying, it's like, look, I'm good at this, but I'm not so good at that. How can we then team up to then really, one on one is then three, maybe, hopefully.
yeah. Of course. And another thing that we started talking about academia, and when I think about students, they are very open-minded because they were not structured into an organization or a company
Mm-hmm.
yet. So they're thinking very open, and academia is about research and about learning and opening your mind to new ideas. And I hope that we can take what we can learn from students into their organizations in a way. So I hope that this collaboration could give them even the mindset of a student, of learning and being curious all the time.
Yeah,
Because if you know the answers, you will not innovate, never. Like, no way, because you
no,
already know,
yeah.
right?
But this
So
goes
so
two ways, huh? And that's also interesting. On the one hand, I'm a big fan of bringing, for instance, students in or working together with universities, with
Mhm.
research organizations, because they indeed have different knowledge. They can look at maybe a problem or situation in a different way. And sometimes they just simply bring in fresh energy, right? So
Right.
it lives on multiple layers, but also vice versa, right? It's not just taking. I think it's also very important that we give back. So as Signify, we care about the development of new talent. Because, of course, in the end, that comes back to us, but it's also good for them.
Sure.
We've had tons of students coming in, and some of them actually stayed, some of them got a job, which is fantastic. But all of them have learned something, and we've
Yeah.
learned something from them as well. So it goes both directions, and I think that's very important.
Yeah, in general, caring about people, whether they're your clients or customers or your employees, you can grow from both directions. If you care about your employees, they will flourish in your company. And if you care about your clients, you will build better solutions for them. So it really
And this
makes
is
sense.
nice, wherever you see how within, say, innovation with a co-creative mindset, all these different elements actually come together. So we do think about, okay, growth, we do think about talent management, HR-related elements. Of course, it's innovation at the core, but all these software elements that you have to have in place to be able to do that are part of this. And you should be mindful of these things so that you can actually start innovating in a co-creative way.
Yeah. So tell me about an innovation project that you're proud of.
Ooh, which one to choose?
You could choose two.
Actually, there's one particular one that I really like. So we've within Signify, we've been working on a particular project, which is a groundbreaking new innovation within light, of course. And what it really does is it brings, let's say, I'm going to say this in a simple way, but it brings the good elements of the outside, of nature, indoors. Everybody knows that, working outside is not so comfortable, but everybody wants to be outside.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to go outside into the woods or at the beach or get the sun in, all of these. It's a great feeling. And then
Yeah.
you go inside, and then
Yeah,
all of a sudden the
especially
world
now.
is different. Especially now, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then you're like, oh no, and then And then people sit there for hours. Most of the day is inside. That's just simply
Right.
not healthy for people.
Right.
And of course, too much sun is also not healthy neither. So it goes both ways. But the question really is, how can we take all those beautiful, good elements from the outside and take them inside, and really create a great place to work, and even, I would say, maybe a fantastic place to work. So this is one of the things that we've been working on, and the team that had been focusing on developing that solution, fantastic, smart people, and they had great ideas. And at some point they realized, well, to really take this a step further, we have to really reach out to our target group. We have to involve these different people. So we set up a trajectory, which took a few months, and we learned from our target group, but also from different experts. We learned from people who had an opinion about that topic, for instance, biophilic architects, for instance. And we then crafted, let's say, the concept of what it actually intrinsically is that we're building together. So we moved forward together, inclusive, working with all the different people that we reached out to, and they knew people who we should then involve again as well. But also internally, of course, it's not just a few people who did that project, but we had engineers, we had designers, we had the general manager of the actual venture was a part of it as well. So everybody who should be part of it was part of it, and we crafted then the value proposition together. It created alignment. It created a lot of energy. It created direction for the team to move forward. It created a lot of buzz, of course, as well. We knew how to talk about the proposition, and so all the different elements, I would say, from a commercial point of view, but also from a design point of view, from the value point of view, as simply the product. It came back, right? It can be traced back to those co-creative exercises that we've done. And we've done various sessions. Sometimes it was simply kind of market researchy kind of thing. Sometimes we did creative sessions, but we worked together. It was never just one or two people.
Yeah,
and that made a big difference.
Yeah, and you gathered information and worked with the end customers or potential customers from the beginning. So you knew more or less what is the right direction as you perceive it as a company, but for your customers as well, because you're building for them, I guess.
As early as possible, yes. And sometimes it means you do that from the beginning on. Sometimes you're working on a bit of a technical solution, trying to figure out, can we actually do this first before we do more? It's not so black and white. Ideally, you start as early as possible. But if you do it a little bit later because of whatever reasons, maybe internally, and often this is the case, right? There's a lot of fear. Why do people not co-create from the beginning on? Because they're scared to share, they're scared to reach out, they're scared to sometimes even have a normal conversation, right? So there's a lot of these fear elements that we have to work with. And so ideally, as early as possible. If you know what, it's a few months later, even if it's a year later, it's just like the metaphor of a tree, right? If you want to have a tree in your garden, the best time to plant it is now. So same as with co-creation. You want to get to really valuable output there with some beautiful innovation. Make sure you start as early as possible, which means now.
Yeah, of course. So if I'll ask you for a few professional tips, what would you tell innovation leaders during these hard times? What could they do, like practical advice?
I think, and this links a bit back to what I was saying before. Very practical is they have to figure out internally how they can facilitate their staff to be more co-creative. So that could mean looking at the different processes and tools. For instance, it's like, look, we have our process, we got tons of processes, we have a fantastic quality process, no problem with that. And they are good, right? Often they're excellent. Question is, do people follow them? That's a different story. But I think the crucial thing is, can you really identify the moments maybe where people can be more co-creative? So it's that journey of innovation, try to figure out how you can add co-creative elements to that. But also, work with your markets. Can you maybe connect markets to innovation more? Can you figure out how you can together reach out to your customers and maybe involve them more into what you're doing? Now, of course, doing that face-to-face is a bit more difficult, but this also works very well online. We were doing a lot of this type of work digitally. So, it makes sense to look at simple things that you can already do. It also means that you could start working with your learning department and say, look, how can we start creating that culture? Often that means you have to communicate a lot. One of the first things I did was, when I joined the company, is set up a specific social media account, because I wanted to communicate with our peers, right? With all the different people in Signify and beyond, because I don't like to think it as we're Signify, these are borders and those are different companies. I mean, sure, we've got our mindsets. Sure, we want to do what we are trying to achieve.
Sure.
But, you shouldn't see those borders. Everybody could be a partner. Everybody could be a stakeholder in what you're doing. So you want to communicate with these people and share the message of, look, we're about sharing. We're about collaborating. Join in. Be open. Open up. All right? Stop being scared.
Yeah. When you're saying scared, the first thing that's come to my mind is like legal stuff. Like people from the legal department saying we cannot reveal our ideas. Maybe the competitors will think about it. Maybe somebody will steal the idea. Maybe it will, it will go the wrong way, or maybe it will present us as a company in the wrong way because we will not go in this direction in the end, or like it's something that's, I know, it sounds really strong in many companies when you think about innovation in general and co-creation specifically.
And they're all very valid reasons to maybe not do as much as you would like to, maybe. And the different considerations you have to work with. But I think that the core of it is, and people often look at legal and think, oh, they don't allow me to do what I want to do. But, that's not their role, right? So they're very willing to help. So the question is a little bit figuring out together, and this is why maybe you should involve legal in these type of questions instead of asking them at the end saying, well, this is what we came up with. Can you please make sure, right? Co-creation in a very basic way involves this party as well. It's like, what can you do together and what can we not do? And this means if you take the innovation process, there's a very large part where we do not have anything that maybe is, it doesn't have any IP yet, or we can talk about. We can always talk about needs. We can always talk about the context. We can always talk about other people's worlds. So from that point of view, there should be no problem. If we've got something really specific that we're super proud of and we haven't told anyone, well, maybe that's the bit you don't want to show yet until everything is, like, from a legal point of view, in order. But then there's still the world of what does it do? What does it mean? What why? There's so much you can still do. Right? It doesn't mean you don't have to do anything. It means, what can I do without then getting into trouble, basically, from a legal point of view.
Yeah, of course. It's more about the grays and then the black and white in general. When you're saying co-creation should be more flexible in a sense, and the way that you're seeing other people, how you see your company, how you see your own role, should be more fluent in a sense that it's not strict in the way we see. And I think that innovation in general demands that will be more flexible. If we don't have that, it's really hard. And when you're thinking about, like, these days that we have this pandemic all around, people are the changes worldwide. Everybody's changing. The needs are changing, and we need to work differently in order to solve all these, like, new needs and a new way of thinking, right?
Yeah. And this is the beauty of it, because you do see now that these needs of, let's say, we have to collaborate, of trying to put the emphasis on value, is becoming stronger and stronger. And of course, with every pandemic, with every problem that comes our way, and there's many, right? This hopefully becomes stronger and stronger. And really, it's about creating that culture where that's the norm. And sure, there's still a lot of politics. Sure, there are a lot of people that are driven by ego and by money, and all of those things, they need to go, because that's not the way forward. But you see that people have less and less trust in these companies, right? They move away from these type of organizations. And if you don't, people simply don't want you anymore. You become irrelevant.
If you're not flexible and you're not innovating and you're not creating something together, it could be very irrelevant and really fast, and in a sense, I guess. And you see, like, companies innovating. Let's think about the medical companies, for example. It's really needed right now in order to solve things. And you see countries and governments creating something together, which was not here in the past, because they need to. They don't have any way of saying, yeah, it's my problem, it's their problem. It's something that we need to tackle together. So it's like
to get to the solution, yes, but then there's still this thing of who's first, who gets like who gets the money, and these of course are issues that we have to deal with. But there are also ways around that, because if you do have that collaborative environment where we from the beginning on say, well, that's not going to happen, then you're trying to build kind of barriers for, let's say, these negative forces to take over, right? Because that's, you don't want to go there, and that's the beauty of it. I think organizations have that power. They can change.
Yeah,
the world.
They can change from within, because it's not about the employees or the company needs. It's about their customers' needs. And when they're facing to the outside world, they want to solve as many problems as they could. So it's good for their clients, but it's good for them as a company too. And you see more companies. I'm writing a book about the potential of opportunities out there from COVID-19. And one of the things you see that giving back is very substantial in the last few years, but now even more, because we are, as a society, we're saying, okay, we're giving taxpayers money to these companies and we expect them to give back something. It's not like one-way ticket here.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good way of seeing this crisis as a good opportunity to do things different and to think together and to collaborate and be less like hostile and hierarchical. Like I'm more than you, I know more than you, I'm going to make more money than you. And you see it like that's in a society, but to see these politics of power in a company too, right? So I'm the manager, I'll get all the like feedback that I've done it, it's my work, my department done it, right?
Yeah.
So
but this is a good point, right? It's about it's KPIs. No problem with KPIs, but if you make it a group KPI, team KPI, it makes much more sense than an individual KPIs. I mean, people know these things, right?
Yeah.
Sure, of course, you can have certain individual KPIs, make sense. But if you're working on an innovation project, what really matters from a KPI point of view, that's something you can look at. And it does exactly the same thing, and it moves away a little bit from the practice of co-creation in innovation. But the point definitely is very valid. If people put emphasis on how much money have you been making, on who's the best, who's the fastest, etc., yeah, that doesn't, in the end, I mean, a lot of good comes out of it as well, but that's not sustainable on the long term. If I've seen one more article about Jeff Bezos being the richest man on earth, I'm like, who cares? Seriously, who cares?
Yeah,
So,
right. I totally understand what you're saying. It's like, what does that say? So
nothing.
What can I do with it, and what does that say about the world, about anything that is related to my world? So what's
you can easily have another conversation about all the bad things that a company like Amazon also creates, right? So there are pluses and minuses, but focusing on something like, in this case, a stupid example, but Jeff Bezos makes the most money, that doesn't drive us further.
Yeah. It's like seeing things in a different perspective, not of like I am as a person, as my role, as me and the company. It's as I said about the ego, it's less egoistic to see it this way, because we're all in it together and we all want to solve something together. And if we want to be empathetical to our end users and to our other colleagues and to ourselves, it will not work. It will never be like what we want it to be.
Yes.
So do you have we're almost done. Do you have a last thing that you think that it should be said about co-creation and innovation, and what could we do in order to make our world better as companies?
Okay, we can have a very long discussion just on that question, but I think there is one thing that I try to give people, and that's simply start doing something more. Nobody expects you to go from zero to hero. It's not the point. It's like, look at yourself, take responsibility, and ask yourself, okay, what can I do now that is a little bit more co-creative? Could I involve my customers more? Could I reach out to different colleagues in the organization, maybe marketing, maybe design, maybe, doesn't matter who, but involve them, because at some point in time they will be part of this process, and it may be better to involve them already to avoid maybe problems later on.
Yeah.
I mean, don't have this mindset of, oh, if it doesn't work out, we'll pivot. To pivot simply means that you didn't do it right in the first place.
Yeah.
Right? I don't like the word pivot. People start talking about it. Pivot means like, well, what are you forgetting to do right in the first place? So, and co-creation can help you to avoid these loops. So, take the first steps, be more inclusive, show maybe a bit more empathy towards other people as well, and facilitate your team members to be more creative. Simply speak it out. So, look, I think we need to collaborate more with our end users. I think we need to involve these people. Take that ownership, start planning things in. Doesn't have to be difficult, but just start.
Yeah, and you don't need the title to do it. So you can be in every role in order to do so. So you don't need the innovation title in order to do so.
I do innovation management, but I put emphasis on co-creation because I want people to understand that what I do is in a co-creative way. Everybody does innovation.
Yeah, of course. It's part of what the people are doing as a company, for example.
Yeah.
So how can people hear more about you and contact you if they have maybe read the book or?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the book, The 7 Principles of Complete Co-Creation, is available also on Amazon. Thanks, Jeff. So a lot of places worldwide you can get it, no problem. It's a very practical book with a lot of very useful content, different examples. The goal was really to help people take a step further. So it's not just one of these books that you read and you think, oh, now I know a lot about it, but you still can't do anything. The point really is like, okay, how can you move forward? So that's one way of doing it. I always invite people to also link with me on LinkedIn. Simply type in my name, as you can see right here, and then feel free. I'm happy to reach out to people later on, and if they have any questions, please do so. Also, of course, on Instagram and Twitter, no problem. That would be a great way to do it.
Sure, I'll add all the links to the video if they want to find you, so it will be easier from the video. So I want to thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you here. It was
likewise.
And I learned a lot about how to co-create and do things better. And I hope we'll have more of this kind of thinking in the world in general, not only in the financial business world.
Yes, me too.
Thank you very much, Maarten, for your time. Thank you. Bye-bye. Yay.